Good afternoon to everyone that's in our Africa time zone. Thank you for making the time to join us on today's webinar. By way of introduction, my name is Lisa Chepik, and I am from Henley & Partners. And today we're going to be discussing the US EB-5 visa. I'm just going to share my screen with you. Great. So let's kick off. Thanks everyone for your time. Thank you to the panelists for joining. And as mentioned, we're talking about the EB-5 Immigrant Investor Program today. And we're also going to touch on US education for African families as part of today's session. The order of events, what we're going to go through today is I'm going to start giving you a little bit of information and background about Henley & Partners very briefly. Then with me today, I have got George Gainey from Gainey Law Group, who's going to talk us through the EB-5 visa program itself, followed by Karel van der Merwe, who is from Coast to Coast Regional Centre. He will talk us through their offering. And then we will finish off with Priyanka, my colleague from Henley & Partners Education, who will talk us through the education offering with a focus on the US. And then, of course, we will have some Q&A at the end. So please feel free to pop any questions you have into the chat box, the question Q&A. We will definitely host a session for that at the end. So a little bit of background briefly for those of you who don't know us. So Henley & Partners is a global firm. We specialize in residence and citizenship by investment. We have over 60 offices currently worldwide. I am based in South Africa in our Cape Town office, and we are able to assist clients with over 40 different programs. So of course, today's discussion is the EB-5, which is one of the 40 odd offerings that we can assist clients with. We have also got a government advisory team. So not only do we advise clients on investment migration options, we also advise governments on setting up programs, re-engineering programs, and we currently have over 15 mandates with various governments around the world. We have over 25 years of experience in the industry. Our chairman, Dr. Chris Kalin, actually pioneered this industry over 25 years ago. So we are the global leaders in this space. And to date, we have advised over 25,000 clients and helped raise over 15 billion USD in foreign direct investment by way of these citizenship and residency programs. So our global footprint differentiates and stands us out from other players in this industry because we have such a significant global footprint. We are able to assist with all of these programs that you can see on the screen now, which goes across Europe, Asia, Africa, Middle East, Caribbean, and of course the Americas, and today's focus being the US EB-5. So the benefit of working with Henley & Partners is, of course, we can advise on all these jurisdictions, and the client's best interests and objectives is the main concern for us, not just trying to shoehorn a client into do a specific program, because that's all we work with. Okay, so without further ado, I'm going to hand over to George Gainey. George is a US lawyer. Thank you, George, for joining us today. And it would be great if you can kick off telling us a bit about the EB-5 visa itself.
Sure thing. Thanks so much, Lisa. Always a pleasure to be here and to share the space with our esteemed colleagues at Henley & Partners and Coast to Coast. Today, I'm going to talk a little bit about the EB-5 visa itself, the requirements and the process. Here's just a little bit about my law practice. We're located in Washington, D.C. I describe the law firm as a U.S. private client immigration law firm. So we really enjoy working with our individual clients and their families and helping them achieve their goals. And because of the nature of our clients, we file and work on a lot of EB-5 matters. So just diving right in, not to take up too much time here from the other presenters. Today we'll talk about EB-5 requirements, a couple of concepts called adjustment of status and consular processing. We'll touch a little bit on timelines, and then we'll try to recap and take a look at how the mechanics of EB-5 work all together. So EB-5 is a green card category, and it's one of the only green card categories that is almost entirely objective, meaning there are two big numbers that we need to hit. The first is the investment of $800,000 in the United States, and the second is the creation of 10 new full-time jobs. So whereas other green card categories are somewhat subjective, trying to evaluate the value that this person or professional will bring to the United States if they continue in their line of work, or if someone has, risen to the very top of a particular field or industry. These are very objective criteria. They're a little more complex than they seem, so we'll talk about those. So first, the investment of $800,000. Those funds, maybe obviously, maybe not, have to be lawfully earned. And we have to do something called source of funds on the $800,000. Often clients will ask if the full amount has to be invested before making the filing. Typically, that's what we like to see. It is possible to do, a partial investment, file the visa petition, and then complete the rest of the investment in a very short amount of time. But typically, we like to have clients file make the full $800,000 investment before filing, and they have to be invested personally by the client, his or herself, meaning that we can't use a holding company or some type of entity to make the investment. There are particular cases where we can use a trust. That is possible if the funds are, ultimately the property of the client. But typically the client will just, make a wire transfer from his or her, personal account to the escrow account of the project. And those funds, like I said, they have to be lawfully sourced, but they can come from any source. So it can be a loan, it can be a gift from a family member, income, savings, it can be dividends. The form doesn't necessarily matter so long as we can do the tracing of the lawful source of funds. And then when we talk about the creation of 10 new full-time jobs, there's two ways to approach job creation. One is to go out and make an investment and hire 10 full-time employees on payroll and retain those 10 employees, or at least 10 job positions for about 2.5 years. That's a very heavy lift, and particularly for an individual who's outside the United States, who's going to be moving to the United States or investing in the United States for the first time. And so recognizing that, Congress created something called a regional center, and Carl will comment on what a regional center is in a little more detail and specificity to EB-5 coast to coast. But it's essentially an entity that has a license from the Department of Homeland Security, and that license allows it to pool investment from disparate individuals who are interested in obtaining a green card, and then deploy those funds in a way that will create jobs, and those jobs can be counted in an indirect manner, meaning that it's sort of a much more passive investment. There's no need for the client to go out and, create this business, execute, and actively hire 10 people, his or herself. We can use an econometric study to actually count job creation through this regional center model. So just a couple notes about, regional centers more generally. They're not backed by the federal government. It's not an entity that the federal government owns or has any ownership interest in or any control over. It's a licensing function that the federal government has here. So sometimes clients ask, well, what's the federal government going to do with my money, and that's not the case. So those are the two big requirements: $800,000 investment, creation of 10 new full-time jobs in the United States. So maybe we can take a step back here and just talk about green card processes generally. In every green card process, and again, EB-5 is a green card category. It's not like a student visa or a tourist visa or a work visa. It's a green card, meaning lawful permanent resident status. And in any green card process, there are two phases. There's the petition phase, and then there's the application phase. At the petition phase, everybody does something different, meaning that's where the client lays out how it is that he or she qualifies for a green card in the United States specifically. Meaning you can say, I won a gold medal in judo, or, I have a job offer and the company in the United States can't find a US worker to fill the position. In the case of EB-5, as we just discussed, it's an $800,000. I made an $800,000 investment from lawfully sourced funds, and that investment is going to create 10 new full-time jobs in the United States. That's the petition phase. And then after we complete the petition phase, we move on to the application phase. So typically the petition is approved, then we move on to the application phase. At the application phase, everybody does the same thing. It's a standardized process where each client gives their biographic information, background checks, medical exam, things of that nature to make sure that essentially the client doesn't have any prior U.S. immigration status violations, doesn't have any criminal history to speak of, and isn't like a threat to public health in the United States, which basically in this day and age means has vaccines and doesn't have tuberculosis. So that's the petition phase specific to the client. Application phase, it's general background check type processing. So if a client is outside the United States, we file the petition, in this case, the EB-5 visa petition. So we prove the lawful source of funds for the $800,000 investment, and we prove that 10 new full-time jobs are going to be created. We file that visa petition. We wait for it to be approved, and then we move on to the application phase through a U.S. consulate abroad. If the client is in the United States with a valid non-immigrant visa, meaning a tourist visa, a student visa, some type of work visa, we can file the petition and the application at the same time. So instead of waiting for the petition to be approved and then filing the application, we do it all at once. And we can also request work and travel authorization for the client. So a scenario where this tends to be very popular is if the entire family is living in the United States, they've come to the United States with an E2 visa or an L visa or an H-1B visa. This is a very popular option. Or if a family has a son or daughter who's studying in the United States with a student visa, typically we see families gifting funds to their children and then allowing their children to file their petition and application at the same time. Why? Because the ability to ask for work and travel authorization essentially gives the client all the upside of the green card. Namely, I can remain in the United States for as long as I want. I can travel in and out of the United States, and I can work in the US without restriction until they actually receive their green card, which can take, maybe a year and a half. So again, very popular option for clients who are already inside the United States or who are thinking about arriving in the United States. And this wasn't always the case. This was a change that went into place about 2.5 years ago with a reform piece of legislation for the regional center program. Maybe here we can pause again and talk about timelines. Typically, I'll go back 2 slides, if a client is moving through consular processing, I would say that process can take about 18 months today. If a client is moving through adjustment of status, I would say it should take about a year. This will depend a little bit on where the client invests, like where the project is physically located in the United States and where they make their investment. Maybe I'll let Carl touch on that during his presentation. But long story short, if a client makes an investment in something called a rural area, which is exactly what it sounds like, then the process is faster. Client makes an investment in an urban area, which is, exactly what it sounds like. Think, Midtown Manhattan or, Brickell in Miami, then that process can take longer. Why? Because again, Congress wanted to incentivize people who are seeking a green card through investment to invest into these rural areas. So then just again, taking an even bigger step back, looking at the mechanics of EB-5, this tries to sort of, conceptualize how all the parts fit together. A client makes an investment of $800,000 into an entity that is sort of sponsored by or controlled by the regional center. The regional center pools investment in that entity and then deploys those funds to typically a third party developer, or they use them as equity in a project. That project, through an econometric study, is demonstrated to create 10 new full-time jobs per investor. And so because we have our $800,000 investment and we have our 10 new jobs per client, that renders green card. So I don't know if I mentioned this at the beginning, but we're located in Washington, D.C. That doesn't mean that we can walk, down to the Oval Office and collect your green card from Joe Biden or incoming re-President Donald Trump, but being in DC does have advantages, and we have lots of clients who are passing through town and coming to visit us. So more than happy to connect with anyone if they happen to be in town or want to talk more. And I think I'll turn it over to Carl from here. Just a reminder that people can ask questions in the Q&A function. I don't know, Lisa, you had asked me to remind people, so.
Thank you, George. Over to you, Carl.
Thank you, George. And thank you, Lisa. Can you see my screen?
Yes, not yet.
I apologize. Sorry, just give me a second.
No problem. There
Can
we
you
go.
see that?
Thank you.
Okay, excellent. Okay, well, thank you very much, Lisa, for the opportunity. It's wonderful being here today, and goeiemiddag allemaal. As you can probably gather from my name, I'm South African, and but I've been living in the US for almost 30 years. Very fortunate, and I've been in the EB-5 industry for about 8 years now. I'm with a company called EB-5 Coast to Coast. We're one of the largest owners of regional centers in the country, as George just explained to you. And we sponsor dozens of projects that are active in the market right now. And we also have our own 2 projects that we're currently raising capital for. I thought I'd give you a quick introduction to both of them, just to give you a good flavor for what a typical EB-5 investment would look like, or maybe not quite so typical. And I would just say sort of over your sort of big picture, sort of the big picture for picking a project obviously is that investors want to ensure their immigration outcome is successful, so getting a green card, and for that job creation is crucial. And secondly, it has to be a safe investment, and that's also fairly obvious. They want to get their money back at the very least, and some sort of modest return on their investment as well. These are not structured as typical investments. They're structured to create a green card and get your money back. So with that introduction, this is our first offering, a company called All Points North. It is a little unique in the EB-5 space because it's an existing operating company. If you Google All Points North, you'll see the company, and they're actually active in the behavioral health space. So they treat patients with mental health and addiction, which unfortunately is a huge business in the US. They operate very much at the high end of the market. So the typical clientele would be celebrities, CEOs, a lot of professional athletes, because it's very expensive. It's top-notch treatment, a top-notch facility, and they're pretty much operating at full capacity. So we're raising EB-5 funds to expand this facility, which is outside Vail in Colorado. It's rural, and as George mentioned, there are some benefits to a rural investment, mostly because it offers the prospect of faster processing or priority processing. I would say the other outstanding feature on this particular project is that it's already existing business that's been growing very rapidly, and they've raised significant amount of non-EB-5 equity capital. They've done to date, they're busy with their 4th round of private equity funding, and they've raised over $100 million. They're looking to raise another 100+ million in this 4th round. So that, I think, has some benefits for EB-5 investors because it de-risks the company, essentially, de-levers the company, it reduces the business risk. And so that's one benefit. The other benefit is that those investors are anticipating that at some point down the road, this company will get sold, and they'll make a lot of money. And if that happens, it's not guaranteed, but if it does happen, the way this is structured, EB-5 investors are in line for a lump sum payout as well, of which works. It's formula driven, but it works out to be $250,000. So that, you know, that's fairly unusual in the EB-5 space. Again, it's not guaranteed, but I think, you know, it's certainly a likelihood. And the other thing to note is, and that's just the case for both of our projects, this one and the next one that I'll briefly mention, they've been pre-approved by USCIS. So to get your petition approved is really a 2-step process. The project, first of all, needs to be approved, and then the investors that invest into that project have to get their petitions approved. And so both of our projects are approved already, and that certainly is beneficial because it kind of speeds up the process because you don't have to wait for the project approval, and it reduces the immigration risk because, you know, there's no risk with the project from an immigration perspective. You are going to get, when they adjudicate you, frankly, they're only going to look at your individual petition, your source of funds, your background checks, etc. If that all checks out, you'll get your approval. So it does reduce the immigration risk considerably if you invest in a project that's pre-approved. I'm just going to skip through these slides. This is just some pictures of what it looks like. It's, you know, very top-notch facility. They've got spa and all sorts of yoga studios and stuff like that you wouldn't really expect in a very in a behavioral health facility. And this is just a slide showing their growth over the past couple of years. It's been a very high growth business. This is the source and uses of funds. How this is $124 million expansion of their Vail facility. They have 5 other facilities around the country, but this is their sort of flagship facility. And it is going to be funded largely with EB-5, but also with some equity from the holding company and a bank loan. And that's a somewhat typical structure in EB-5. It is a little heavy on the EB-5 component, but they do have alternative sources if need be. As I mentioned, they're doing another round of non-EB-5 equity funding at the moment. The job creation, which is crucial, as George mentioned, is pretty good in this project. Because it's a regional center project, they can rely on not just direct jobs that they will create, but indirect jobs. And so there's a 50% job cushion here, assuming we raise the full amount, which would be 90 investors or 900 jobs. It's actually going to create 1,347 jobs. So it's a very healthy job cushion. So these are just the terms on this particular project. As I mentioned, there's the potential for a lump sum payout. It's a 4.5-year investment term from, let's say, yeah, give or take, with a 1-year potential optional extension. Obviously, if the company is sold prior to that, you'd exit at that point with the lump sum payout. And it is structured. This is actually a preferred equity investment. A lot of most, you either get typically you'd get a loan structure or an equity structure. This is a preferred equity investment. The benefit of that is that the EB-5 investors are ahead of private equity investors and management in terms of the payout schedule in the event the company gets sold. I think that I'll just included this slide just to show a little bit how this company has grown recently. They've done 4 rounds of equity funding. As I mentioned, they've raised over $100 million to date. And these are the valuations that those equity investors or those private equity firms bought in at, which just shows this is currently valued at $500 million. So it's a very valuable business already. And the management team here is highly regarded. They've done this before. They've built a company. The owner had built a company in Maryland that he sold at a 14.5 times multiple, made a ton of money, and a lot of those investors are following him into this particular project as well. This is the CEO, a guy called Noah Nordheimer, and there's a little video here introducing himself, which I won't play right now. And I'll just hop onto the next project as well, which is called Copper Valley. This is a more traditional sort of EB-5 real estate play. It's a master plan community in Northern California. It's a very well developed community already. It has several hundred homes. It has golf. It has a hotel. It has a lake, lakefront access. There's some shops, there's some restaurants, etc. So it's a very established community. We're raising EB-5 for mixed use. So we're expanding the golf facilities. We're building townhomes. We're adding some commercial space, etc. So it's called Copper Valley, and it's in a town called Copperopolis in Northern California, which is actually an old copper mining town. And also, this project has been approved. The project application was approved in August. The feature here, I think, is that the attraction, I should say, is that it's a 2-hour drive from the Bay Area, so San Francisco, San Jose area, and the cost of living is significantly less. Houses in this community sell for around $800,000 to $900,000, which is obviously a lot less than San Francisco. And it's a very attractive area to be in because your quality of life is very high. You've got a lot of local amenities, biking and hiking, skiing in winter, etc. So the vineyards, it's a very beautiful part of California. It's also a rural project, so you've got the benefit of faster processing. And the way we've structured this is we've provided a lot of collateral to EB-5 investors to ensure that they get their money back. And so it will be structured as a first lien investment. So EB-5 will have a first lien mortgage on a parcel of land, which we are actually in the process of valuating we're getting a valuation on that, and that's probably going to be, well, I shouldn't say probably, but I don't know yet, but I think it's going to be around $80 million. And the EB-5, the maximum EB-5 is 32 million raised. So there's a lot of collateral as far as the first mortgage position is concerned. And then in addition, there's going to be a pledge from the owner of Copper Valley of all the assets of the whole development. So a lot of collateral here to protect EB-5. It's structured as a 4-year term with 2 possible 1-year extensions. And this is actually we're offering EB-5 investors a very high return here of 4.5% for the first 4 years. If they extend that into year 5 and 6, those returns jump up to 6% and then 7.5%, which annualizes to a return of just over 5%. So a good return as well while you're sort of waiting for your capital to be returned, you're getting paid for that, for that opportunity cost. And construction is starting before the end of the year as well. So that's another positive here, because once construction starts, job creation starts. As I mentioned, it's an ideal location within a 2-hour drive of the Bay Area, but also, Napa Valley and Yosemite and all sorts of lovely places. This is the capital stack on this particular project. The developer, or the owner, I should say, is a very wealthy guy called Richard Nathan, and he's committed up to $20 million to get this project going. And the rest will be funded with EB-5 and a construction loan and some infrastructure bonds. It's a 4-year investment, as I mentioned, with 2 possible 1-year extensions, a 5.2% annual return, assuming it ends up being a 6-year investment. And you've got the first mortgage position and the pledge of all of the assets in Copper Valley, which we have had appraised at over $300 million. So plenty of avenues to ensure the safety of EB-5 investors' investment here. The job creation is good, but not as good as the other project. Assuming we raise the full $32 million, that would be 40 investors. It would require 400 jobs, and there's a decent enough cushion here of 470 jobs. And that's really an introduction to the 2 projects. This is a little bit on us. So EB-5 Coast to Coast is where I work. We are one of the largest owners of regional centers in the country. We do cover the whole country in terms of regional center coverage, which and I think, because of that, well, not just because of that, but we're also sponsoring many projects in the market that are that we're acting more in a compliance role for those projects, and they're doing the fundraising, but we're doing all the compliance work. So we very careful about our compliance, and we take that very seriously. We make sure we do everything absolutely correctly, because it's not just our investors, but hundreds of other investors rely on us as the regional center on their particular project. And with that, I will hand over, and thank you very much. We're happy to take questions afterwards.
Thanks a lot, Carl, and thank you to both George and Carl. I think that was very informative. Obviously, due to time limitations, we don't want to. There's a lot more detail all of us could go into today, but we're just keeping it brief. And the idea is to, we'll answer some questions at the end, and then obviously know to reach out to myself, and I can then share details of Carl and George after today's webinar. But without further ado, I'm going to hand over to my colleague Priyanka. So just as a bit of background, Hendy & Partners has always traditionally worked with residence and citizenship by investment. However, hand in hand with that is education, global education for our clients' children. So it's always been something very important to us. And subsequently, we have our own Hendy & Partners education team now. And I'll let Priyanka give you more detail on the ins and outs of that offering, which ties in very nicely, obviously, with the whole theme today. So let us share a screen, and I will then hand over to Priyanka.
Thank you so much. Thank you everyone for joining us today, and I am genuinely happy to be here, not just as a representative of Hendy & Partners education team, but also as a mother of a 16-year-old child who is eager to explore the education opportunities abroad and want to become a part of global community. So as a parent, we all want the best for our children, and education is the foundation of their future. Now, we'll talk about the international education landscape. So over the last few years, we have observed a dynamic shift in the international education landscape. The aspiration among today's youth to explore the world for education opportunities and career opportunities is growing exponentially. However, there's a surge has also brought challenges with top destinations like UK, USA, Canada, and Australia. They're witnessing a significant decline in the student visa approvals. And that's besides this limited number of visa approval, USA is still remain the #1 choice worldwide, thanks to its elite institutions, cultural diversity, and the vast opportunities it offers. Especially with the new government in scene, which may not be as welcoming to the immigrants, it's becoming increasingly more critical to seek professional guidance while navigating these education opportunities in the USA. Now, I would like to talk about Africa as a region. So, Africa as a region has emerged as a powerhouse in the global education space in last 1 or 2 years. With its wealth of talented and ambitious youth, Africa is sending over more than 430,000 students abroad currently. And out of them, 12,000 plus are coming only from South Africa. Studies have shown that the percentage of students interested in global education opportunities has grown from 12 to 48% when the respondents were 25 or below the age. So we can see the growing demand of international education opportunities in South Africa. And among the South African students also, the USA remains the most popular choice with its welcoming environment and unmatched resources. In 2022, USA has received the largest number of South African students, which is like more than 2,000. And the number is increasing year on year. South African students with their cultural diversity, knowledge, and talent are already leaving a mark on the global community. And they will continue to play an integral role in shaping the future. Now, I mostly receive this question a lot from the parents. That can my child graduate with both a degree and a passport? And my answer is yes. And that's why Henley Partner is different from any other organization. As adults and parents, we know that education alone cannot guarantee a successful career for your child. A child's career trajectory depends on a lot of other factors, such as the investment in their future, in their education, the qualification they earn, the country they study in. And according to a lot of surveys and reports, it has been observed that people with tertiary education are earning 50% more than those with secondary education. Plus, the earning potential is heavily influenced by the country you are born and brought up in. So that's why combining the world-class academics with the right kind of residency or citizenship program is the only way to set up your child for the global success. As you can see on the screen, there's a huge difference in the tuition fee of a domestic student and an international student. And especially in countries like the UK, Canada, and Australia, it is huge. I would like to share a very interesting information about the Europe, because a lot of countries in Europe are offering tuition-free education or affordable education and ensuring that there's an option for everyone. Now, let me share a very interesting story highlighting the importance of strategic planning. So recently we were working with a South African family where the child, a 16-year-old child, was aspiring to pursue a 4-year law degree program at US Berkeley. And when we were discussing and analyzing, we found that the family would need to invest $209,000 just for the tuition fee, excluding the accommodation and other expenses. And once the degree is completed, the child would have to return back to South Africa within 90 days. However, by opting for the EB-5 program, they unlocked an entirely different future, not only for their child, but also for the generations, for their upcoming generations. With the EB-5 program, the family gained the access to the same opportunities and benefits like any other American citizen, including the higher earning potential and a limitless future for their child. In today's landscape, where upcoming immigration policy may not be in favor of international students, programs like EB-5 are the great option. Now, I would like you to introduce to our education team. So as you can see on my screen, we have a very good team of global advisor. They all are former academician, admission counselors, and school principal. And they all are very experienced. They all have more than 25 years of experience. Our success speaks for itself. We have maintained 100% placement in the preferred schools and institutions worldwide under the guidance of our professional advisors. Our team will help you navigate the most important and difficult journey of your life, which is the choosing the right education for your child across the globe. Now you must be thinking, why Henley and Partner Education? What makes us different? So let me share this with you that we offer child-focused, premium, and bespoke services. We are the only organization that helps your child with both a degree and a passport or residency. We are completely data-driven, and we rely on our Henley academic profiling assessment data to match each child to a right school or a university. And the most important part is the well-being and safety of your child is our primary focus. Now, the key services, as you can see on the screen, starting from the assessment till the additional services. Now, I would like all of you about, I would like to brief all of you about our Henley Academic Profiling Assessment, which is a very powerful online adaptive assessment for the children starting from the age of 6 to 16. It is not a test or an exam to give your child a scorecard. It is basically a tool to identify the strength and areas of improvement in your child's academic performance. So it is benchmarked against UK's private school standards, and it will help you to evaluate your 10-year or 12-year-old child's academic performance against a 10 or 12-year-old UK student. And you can compare that if your child is performing below the benchmark or above the benchmark. Now, the time duration of this assessment is not more than 2 hours. And since it is online, so your child can appear for it from any part of the world. It covers maths, English, verbal, and non-verbal reasoning. And within 5 days of assessment submission, you will receive a detailed feedback report along with a call from our HAPA consultant. Now, let's talk about the onboarding process. It's very simple. It starts with a 60-minute free of cost counseling session. Once the family is onboarded and all the formalities are done, we will then have in-depth detailed discussion with the family and the child to shortlist the school or the university for them, and we will support the family throughout the process. We have been receiving a lot of requests from our clients and from the families for the customized services, like they would like to have an look and feel of the campus, or they want to go for summer programs to experience the campus life. So we offer these additional services to fulfill those demands. Plus, we also provide assistance with homeschooling or special education needs. Concierge services are also available on request. So at the end, I just would like to emphasize that we are here to make your child's journey smoother, brighter, and full of opportunity. Please feel free to reach out to us for any further inquiry. We will be more than happy to help you all. Thank you so much. That's it from my side, Lisa.
Thank you, Priyanka. Yeah, as we've all realized, the two go hand in hand, and it certainly is a unique offering that Henley and Partners has, is that exact offering of the passport residency tied together with the education offering, which is unique to us. So there are a couple of questions in the Q&A that have been coming through. So I think it's a good idea that we'll answer them live for everyone to hear, because I've seen some good questions coming in that I think will benefit everyone who is left on the call with the responses. So I'm going to go through them. George, I think a lot of them are probably going to be directed at you. Can you see them on your side there, George?
Yeah. Do you want me to just kind of rip through some of the ones that I think
Are you
I can
happy
answer?
to do that? I think that's
Sure.
yeah.
Yeah, so I'll just go from yeah, I'll just run through these. So there's a question. It takes 18 months processing from the time of application, 1 year and 6 months. Yes, I think that's about accurate for an investment, assuming that the client is pursuing consular processing, meaning that they're outside the US, they make their investment, they file their visa petition, and then they're going to process through a US consulate abroad. Those processing times are a lot better than they had been historically. Again, that's because of prioritized processing for investments in rural areas. And because generally speaking, we're past the pandemic and USCIS seems to, be working on these files. Processing times are really good also for regional center filings. So that's good news abound. Another question, is it expected that incoming President Trump may increase the USD $800,000 buy-in? That is technically possible, but highly unlikely. And that's because the legislation that controls EB-5 and the Regional Center Program already has an automatic increase the minimum investment amount, and that'll kick in, it's every 5 years starting, I think, in January of 2027. The only way for that amount to be changed would almost certainly be through legislative action, meaning that the House of Representatives would write a bill, the Senate would mark it up, and it would be passed by both houses and then signed into law by President Trump. Maybe that could be part of some, broader legislation affecting the U.S. immigration system. Maybe it could be part of like a technical fix that actually has to be done sometime in 2026 to the EB-5 legislation. But I don't think that will be a high priority. And just to really specifically answer the question, President Trump himself can't unilaterally increase the minimum investment amount. There's another question here. I'm from Kenya and I've incorporated a C Corp in the US. I'm planning to employ US citizens as contractors. I would like to know how I can go about getting work authorization, if I can use company funds to apply for the investor visa. So this is one of the difficulties of applying for EB-5 sort of on your own, meaning you invest into your own business and you hire 10 new full-time employees. That's because you actually can't use contractors. You can't use what are called 1099 employees in the United States, meaning you can't say, well, the cleaning person who comes to my office, I contract her services through a cleaning service company. So she counts as an employee. They need to be your employees on your payroll. This is a good question. What are the additional administrative costs for processing in addition to the $800,000 investment for a family of 4? I would budget for about $100,000 of cost, meaning the $800,000 and that's an investment, and then I would budget for about $100,000 of costs, including attorney's fees, including fee that you would pay to the regional center, and including fees that you pay to USCIS. This is a great question. If we are in the US as a family on holiday with our B1, B2 visitor visa, can we then do the investment while we are in the US and pursue adjustment of status while we're in the US on a tourist visa? Yes, that is possible to do. It requires some careful planning, particularly with respect to timing. So when you enter the US with your tourist visa, you're essentially saying implicitly, my plan is to go to, Disney World, see a couple of family members, and then go home. So if the day after you arrive in the United States, you request lawful permanent resident status, obviously there's it's incongruous with what you just said the day before, which is I'm just going to leave, after I complete my visit here. So you would want to work closely with your attorney to make sure you're not gonna, be accused of having made a material misrepresentation when you enter the United States. But this is possible. We've done this successfully for clients who are already in the United States who have wanted to pursue adjustment of status, even with tourist visas. In case I do have my EB-5 approved, how long will it take to obtain US citizenship, and what are the physical residence requirements? So to become a US citizen, you need to hold your green card for 5 years. And in that 5-year period, there are two physical presence considerations. One is cumulatively, have you spent 30 months of the past 60 months physically in the United States? So you just take out your passport and you count your days that you've spent in the US. That's one consideration. And then the other is, have you taken any one trip that lasted more than 6 months outside the US? Meaning you left the US on January 1st and you didn't return until, July 15th. That would break up your continuous residency period. So again, it's cumulatively, have you spent 30 of the past 60 months physically in the US? And then have you had any trips in excess of 6 months at a time? If a client is interested in pursuing EB-5 by opening a subsidiary of their business, would it be more advantageous to apply for EB-5 directly, or would it be better to apply for an L1 or E2 and then transition? Please note, client is based outside the US. That's a pretty technical question, and it'll depend a lot on the specifics. Generally speaking, L1 visas are, it's a heavy lift. It's a lot of work. But it is possible. E2 visas are limited to clients who have a passport from a particular set of countries, and also limited to how they actually obtain that passport. So if they obtained it through something, a financial investment, then they need to actually be domiciled in that country for 3 years before they're able to apply for their E2 visa. So for example, Grenada. You have a Grenadian passport through, an investment that you made there, or a donation you made there, you need to actually be domiciled in Grenada for 3 years before you can apply for the E2. And I think that's all that I can answer here, Lisa.
Let me just see. Is it possible to lose the money in case my application is rejected, or am I refunded in a case of rejection? I don't know, Carl, if you want to answer that one, or George, who would be better placed?
Sorry, the question was, is it possible to lose my investment?
If the application is rejected, or are they refunded in the case of a rejection?
That's typically the case, the latter. A lot of offerings are going to have language in the offering documents that if you're denied for whatever reason, the investment amount is returned. It's going to be project specific, so you do need to look at the offering documents quite carefully. We do have that language in both of our offerings. Again, I think it's an unlikely event if the project's already pre-approved and you work with an excellent attorney like George, the risk of a denial is minimal to negligible. So I think, but yes, that language is in there. If you are denied, you're going to get your $800,000 back.
Thanks, Carl. And then I guess similar to that is the question, is the return of 800K investment guaranteed on the completion of the project? So I think the two go hand in hand. George, I know you mentioned some specifics, and I know this, that there cannot be any guarantee legally. So do you want to just touch on that?
Yeah, so it's an investment, so it has to be subject to, total or partial loss. So the clients won't have, for example, a note from the regional center that says, on this date, you can come to us and we will pay you back. And if we don't, repay your investment, then you can go to court and get, immediately get an order from a judge instructing us to repay. Having said that, Carl can probably speak to this. Most regional centers will, their main function is to make sure that the jobs are created, make sure that their investors get their funds back. So they will build in as many protections as they can, and they'll speak with their attorneys and sort of, get as close to the line as they can to make sure that things are legally in place that will allow their investors, their clients, to get their funds repaid, but also not, prejudice their ability to obtain their green card.
Thanks, George. And then there's just two more here that we can go through briefly as well, just being aware of the time. Is it more worthwhile to have the EB-5 visa convert to permanent residency or citizenship? And why would a high net worth choose the USA? George, I guess that's probably one for you as well.
Yeah, I mean, so the EB-5 is permanent residency. So it's not a visa that you then choose to convert to lawful permanent resident status or not. It is a green card. Mm-hmm. Then the question is, do you obtain citizenship or not? And that just depends on, a client's, particulars. You can renew your green card indefinitely. Or, if you meet the residency requirements and time requirements, the good moral character requirements, you can apply for citizenship. But it's not a question of, well, I have this EB-5 visa, now I want to decide if I want to become a lawful permanent resident or not. That is what the visa is. It's a green card category.
Great, yeah, that's clear. I know with a lot of the other programs we work with, it starts off as like a visa, a golden visa, and then there's a choice to go to permanent residency and citizenship. So thank you for clarifying that, George. That's very helpful. And then there's a final question about, what are the additional admin costs for processing in addition to the 800K investment? So, that's quite a specific family of four. I mean, we can obviously, go into that detail offline, but George, from a high level, what additional costs are involved other than the investment?
Yeah, I would budget for about $100,000 of cost. $100,000 to $120,000 of cost for a family of four.
Thank you. Wonderful. And we are spot on time, an hour in, 1 minute past. I don't think there are any more questions that are left. Thank you very, very much to George, to Carl, to Priyanka. I really appreciate your presence today, and to the audience. Thank you very much for attending. I hope you found it useful. You know where to get hold of me, and of course, happy to share Carl and George's and Priyanka's details with you should you want to get in contact with them as well. So thanks all, and have a wonderful afternoon and evening further. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Lisa.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.